Interesting. Yeah.
There's my One Piece rant. Go with your
There
Fantastic
you
Four
go.
rant.
No, that's great, man. No, I'm glad
I
to hear
love
it.
it though.
Now, do you say where that's your favorite manga? Does that translate? Is it your favorite anime? Like, or
That's tough. Since I started watching anime, I definitely have a softer spot for it because I that's kind of what got me into it
hmm
all.
hmm
Um, but I've learned that there are some animes that are better watched and some mangas of the same series that are better read.
okay, okay.
Um, the adaptations aren't always the best, you
Oh,
know, like making a movie out of anything. Sometimes they
yeah,
leave off this or that, or they
right.
change a word here or there, things like that. So it just depends on the series. One Piece, I think both of them is really good.
Yeah. So the
Dragon,
anime stands up.
yeah, the anime really
Yeah.
holds up, especially now. This new generation of animation that we live in right now is incredible.
hmm
It really started in, like, I'm sure you've heard of Demon Slayer.
Heard of? Yep.
But huge series. It broke the internet, broke Twitter at one point. I mean, big deal. Surprisingly popularity. I mean,
hmm
incredible amounts.
hmm
And they came out with animation that was just, it really took that next step forward. How I hear it, like Avatar when it first came out. Avatar
Oh,
was that
okay.
next step, and so
Yeah.
we're kind of living in that next step of animation, and it's good eating everywhere, but they're
Nice.
years behind where the manga is. So if
Oh,
you
yeah. Yeah.
watch it and you're like, oh, I really like this, I'm gonna read it now, because
hmm
which is kind of nice to watch it first before you read it, because then you can really read it in the characters' voices, and you
hmm
can
hmm
hear the laughs and hear this, and it's just, I don't know, I think it's a little bit more special. So, and I'm
Sure.
definitely a sub guy. I
Oh,
do
yeah.
appreciate the dub on, like, Dragon Ball dub. It's just too nostalgic for me. I can't get rid of it.
Mm.
But
Okay. Yeah.
big sub guy.
Normally, yeah, yeah. You aim for the subs. So, yeah, you're kind of saying, yeah, that some of these adaptations aren't as good as the original, like manga. How does I'm not sure if you have read Death Note.
Yeah,
Have you read how is that adaptation? Because that's literally the only anime I've watched.
Death Note's a
I
great
haven't.
one.
Is it okay? Yeah, because I've watched Death Note twice. I did watch it dubbed once. Sorry, first I watched it subbed by myself. I loved it so much, and I was like, I think I could get my wife to watch this. I think she actually wouldn't mind it because it's for an anime, like it's not as out there. I find, like, obviously, yeah, there's it's kind of out there with you know uh
Magical Notebook and demons, but
yes, it's exactly, but I felt it was just going to be something that she would like, and so I watched it subbed by myself, but I was like, I'm not going to convince her to watch, with
I
the
can't believe it's
subtitles. So
X-rated.
I turned on the dub for the second time, and she loved it. Yeah, she really liked it so much so that she wanted to watch the American live action remake like immediately after we finished it. She was like, "Oh, there's like a live action movie of it," and I was like, "I don't think I'm gonna watch. I've heard nothing but bad things about it, so I
Breaks the
don't want
back of
to."
the franchise, man.
Yeah, yeah. But so
uh,
that is like generally a adaptation that's pretty good.
for sure, for
So
sure.
you're
Yeah.
saying, yeah, that some of those anime adaptations of manga aren't good, but that's the only anime I literally have not watched any Dragon Ball. I had a lot of friends that were actually really into Dragon Ball growing up, but I could never really get into it. Then I have watched, and I was really liking it. It was just something I just didn't keep up with. The Oh boy, Cowboy Bebop. I
Oh
watched
yeah.
probably like the first 5 episodes of that, and I was really liking it. Um, but I kind of stopped for some reason. I'm gonna get around to finishing it someday, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Another good one. Then some anime adaptation like Tokyo Ghoul is better read than watched. It doesn't have
Okay.
a bad anime adaptation, but it's just one of those that just feels like it's meant to be read
Okay.
as opposed.
Interesting.
Berserk is a hugely popular, kind of dark fantasy um, manga, and it's definitely one that hasn't had good anime adaptations yet. And they've
Oh.
tried it a few times, and it's just not good every time, or it's okay every time. So that's one of the manga's a lot better. And then some just maybe only had one anime adaptation, and it was like a 60-minute made for TV movie, in the 90s. So some just don't have anything recent enough where it's, maybe considered good or not. So
yeah, that's really interesting. So, and typically when an anime is like adapting a manga, they do, for the most part, are just telling like the same exact story, whereas there's adaptations of like Western comics where they take a lot of liberties with the source material and kind of make it its own thing. Like, again, going back, yeah, just briefly, like, to the MCU, a lot of those movies are kind of loosely based on like storylines, but they're almost just doing like their own thing, and
right.
that's can be really interesting. A lot of the times it's like, of course, they're going to change it because they can't, but I guess with an anime it's kind of easier to adapt like that exact story, right?
Yeah, and because you're not pulling from different runs.
Yes. Yeah.
You want to read My Hero, you start at issue 1. Like,
Right.
there's no
Mhm.
issue 1 of this. You know how runs work. You know how
Yes.
this is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
which, I think that I'm glad you brought that up. I wish there was more animated adaptations of comic runs.
Yeah.
Because we got DC. DC has a good animated universe. I feel like their whole thing was really good, especially the Flashpoint, kind of where it started. I think that
Hmm.
was a really good adaptation. All Star Superman, that has a
Yeah.
really pretty good adaptation. So I think,
Yeah, it does.
I want comics to succeed. Like, I
Yeah.
want them to be popular and awesome. I want people to be reading them. And
Hmm.
I kind of how I watched anime and then found the manga. I think that you could get the same formula for Western comics. Like, if
Yeah,
they,
that's a really good point, actually.
yeah, I mean, why not? Because we'll watch serials. I mean, the Harley Quinn on HBO.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've seen
Hmm.
that.
I haven't. I heard really good things though.
Really good. People were excited about it and watching it. It doesn't pull from anywhere, but
Yeah.
I think it could be done. I mean, especially if you adapt something well.
Yeah.
Take a good run and just like Immortal Hulk, but do it.
Mm.
Serialize it.
Yeah.
Over. I mean, I guess they're more into doing the movies, but
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Yeah. I guess the thing with, like, yeah, with Western comics, Marvel specifically, I find is really bad for when an adaptation, like a movie adaptation, is coming out. They always relaunch the book, to tie, and like they'll change it to tie in with whatever is happening in that movie too. So there's a really bad example of this. So um, probably like around 2015, I want to say, maybe a bit before 2014. There was Dan Slott was a long time writer on Amazing Spider-Man,
right.
and they got to issue 700, and and they did a really great storyline. I'm not sure if you probably heard of it, probably just being somewhat aware. Superior Spider-Man.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
heard?
yeah.
Yeah. So they relaunched Amazing Spider-Man as Superior Spider-Man, where Doc Ock has taken over Peter Parker's body. There was a body swap at the end of issue 7, or at the beginning of like issue 700 of Amazing
Okay.
Spider-Man, and it is fantastic. Like, it is actually one of the best Spider-Man stories of like the past few decades, to be honest. Like, Superior
Okay.
Spider-Man, absolutely. Like, you think, okay, yeah, Doc Ock, like, body swap, like, it sounds schlocky or whatever it is, but
That's
like,
all right.
it's actually amazing. Because he gets into Peter Parker's body, and he's like, because Doc Ock was dying, he was going to
Okay.
die, and he was like, well, I'm going to, yeah, body swap with Peter Parker. So Peter Parker died in Doc Ock's body, and then but he was like coexisting, so like the ghost of like Peter Parker was like kind of haunting
Doc
Doc
Ock
Ock
in
in
Peter's
his
body.
body. Yeah, and so he was like, "Hey, you took over my body. You have my brain. You have all my memories. You're about to see why I am the way I am." And so like Peter Parker's like overwhelming goodness, like it just overwhelmed Doc Ock, and he was like, "Oh, I have to be a hero now." He's like, so he saw like all of Peter Parker's memories, and like it just overwhelmed him so much. He was like, "I'm going to be a hero, but I am going to be better than Peter Parker was." Kind of like, so that's why he was like, "I'm
The
going to be the
superior.
superior Spider-Man."
Oh,
So he kind of,
okay.
yeah, like it was this, yeah, really interesting take on Spider-Man. It kind of like put, yeah, Doc Ock, because typically, people think Green Goblin, that's like Spider-Man's like biggest arch nemesis, but then this kind of comes around and it's like, oh no, like Doc Ock was actually like, um, you know,
He was the
kind of
man behind the man the whole
the man,
time.
exactly, yeah. So then, yeah, just amazing. Anyway, what I wanted to get at was it was like a 30 issue run. All of it was fantastic and it was going good. But then I think it was, yeah, it was Amazing Spider-Man 2. The second Andrew Garfield movie was coming out in 2014. So they canceled Superior Spider-Man. They relaunched it as Amazing Spider-Man, and they brought back Peter Parker. They like quickly, and like it was so it felt really rushed, where they, I'm quite sure he would have continued on this story if it
Right.
wasn't for higher ups at Marvel being like, oh no, we can't have the main Spider-Man book on the shelves being Doc Ock in Peter Parker's body. So we're just wrap that storyline up.
Mm.
Even though it's great, like critically, it was all doing really well. Wrap it up. Now you got to relaunch Amazing Spider-Man issue 1, where Peter Parker is Spider-Man, so no one's confused if they're coming in. And then it wasn't as great. And then he was also fighting Electro on the cover, right? Who was the villain of
Right.
Amazing Spider-Man 2. So, really just trying. Marvel is so bad for that. They always just want to like cash in and like be like, well, people are going to see this movie, we gotta have it. So even if they've got a really good thing going on in the comics, they kind of flush it all down to try to, make it tie in with the movies, and usually it never pays off.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm starting to gather. It doesn't feel like they're moving as a unit for the company.
Mhm.
It feels just disjointed, and comics are hard to get in. So
Yeah.
funny, I did one of these discussions the other day, and we did Ultimate Comics, Miles Morales Spider-Man.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
And so I like, hey, Brian Michael Bendis, Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, read this. My head, I have the origin, like the start of Miles Morales. He had the second run.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And there was that confusion because, where's the start point? Where's, it's same author, it's a continuation, but it's a new #1. And
Yeah.
it makes it's a little frustrating with how they number things. I think it makes it's not user friendly, accessible friendly,
No. Yeah.
and kind of keeps it in that niche that it is
Yes.
of,
Yeah. Yeah. That's I do like, now they're getting, for the past couple of years they've been sticking like the legacy numbering on the Marvel books, which is nice, but it never like lines up, and it's still, yeah, kind of confusing, where
it's
it's like,
still a new number